House Republicans nominated Congressman Mike Johnson from Louisiana to be the Speaker designate, marking the fourth nominee in just 3 weeks. Here he is after the vote last night.
It's been quite a process. Democracy is messy sometimes, but it is our system. This conference that you see, this House Republican majority, is united. We have a very busy agenda. We have appropriations bills to get through the process, but you're going to see this group working like a well-oiled machine.
Former Speaker Kevin McCarthy actually came in second, surpassing Representative Byron Donalds, who is also running.
Congressman Tom Emmer joined the top spot for about 4 hours yesterday, but abruptly dropped out of the race. Asked about the opposition to the Minnesota Congressman, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene had this to say.
His voting record is what turned me. He had voted against President Trump's ban on transgenders in the military. He voted for the Democrats' gay marriage bill that opens up churches and other places for lawsuits if they use their faith and stand against it. He was for the national popular vote at one time, and that's not a movement I can support.
How much did Emmer's vote to certify the 2020 election have to do with the opposition against him?
Well, it played a big role for me. I voted to object, and I don't think that was a fair election. I think there was a lot of election fraud.
Speaking of Trump, the former president blasted Emmer on Truth Social after he won the nomination, writing, "He's out of touch with the base," adding, quote, "Voting for a globalist rhino like Tom Emmer would be a tragic mistake." It's unclear if Johnson can pull 217 votes needed to win the gavel by noon today, which is when the House is set to vote.
And CNN's Jake Tapper called the whole situation a clown car. Let's watch.
I'm covering life and death issues, serious tragedies, serious momentous occurrences here in Israel and, of course, in Gaza. And, of course, we have to interrupt this for one moment to cover the complete and utter clown car that is the House Republican speaker's race back in Washington, D.C.
So who is Johnson? Apparently, he's a social conservative who doesn't transgress in the ways that Marjorie Taylor Greene described. She was against the popular vote. She was against the gay marriage bill and the interracial marriage bill. And this fellow, and she was also, there was some question about whether or not he was sufficiently supportive of Trump in his defense of his claims of overturning the election.
Right.
That's not the case for Mr. Johnson. Apparently, he's a lawyer. He was formerly the chairman of the Republican Study Committee, and he served on President Trump's impeachment defense team. And he also played a role in recruiting House Republicans to sign a legal brief supporting a lawsuit seeking to overturn the 2020 election results. So he is much more clearly on Team Trump and sort of the election contesting or election denialism camp. Seems to have appeased that faction of the Republican Party. The question is if he can get to 217.
Well, and he also, very importantly, is against more funding for Ukraine. That's a policy position he has that is probably highly relevant here. And I agree with what he said when he pointed out that, yes, democracy is messy. This is just democracy at work. I don't quite understand I got no beef with Jake Tapper, but how dare people take multiple votes on who should be the leader of the caucus and then of the chamber? That's what the process is just working itself out. It's better when there's robust debate and disagreement over who should occupy the leadership position. These are differences, ideological differences, and personality differences being worked out. That's better than everyone just marching in lockstep because they have no choice and no say over who is in leadership. I'm glad that there's at least some disagreement over the American funding priorities in the Republican Party, and that's getting worked out. And frankly, I think it would be good for them to empower a speaker who has especially at this moment we're in, who perhaps, we have to learn more about the totality of his foreign policy views.
Including his views on funding Israel.
For sure, but it is willing to challenge some aspects, at least, of interventionist, neoconservative orthodoxy is an encouraging and healthy sign, and obviously it will be a good sign if he, personality-wise, is appeasing enough to some of the more establishment figures that they don't feel like they're rewarding a bad actor, since they're never going to get to a speaker unless that happens. So we'll see. This vote is expected to take place, I think, within the hour. And we'll see if he has, obviously it's been so dramatic in the shakeups, like Tom Emmer was the guy for a while, and then Trump spoke up on Truth Social and was like, no, I hate this guy, screw him. And Tom Emmer was like, okay, you know what, I'm going to get out of the race before people in my own coalition, before Republicans start scrutinizing my record too much, so that he doesn't get like tarred as a globalist rhino forever. So we'll see how Johnson fares, but I think the signs for him are much more encouraging.
Well, the New York Times is reporting that apparently after the initial closed-door vote, only a few Republicans indicated that they would not back Mr. Johnson on the floor, but there were about 20 Republicans not present, and they can't lose more than a few if all the Democrats show up, that is. I think the magic number was they can miss 4. So this still seems incredibly close. It's hard to believe that this would end at this juncture, especially given that we still are, more than 2 weeks out from the ultimate funding deadline.
They can keep doing this for a while longer if they want.
Right. So if you're Matt Gaetz or part of that faction and you wanted to make a point, why would you stop making your point at this juncture, especially for this very little known fellow, unless you think you can get some commitments out of him in terms of advancing your particular interest?
There was some reporting, I can't remember from which mainstream outlet, so I don't know whether it's accurate or not, that Jim Jordan is not totally done seeking more influence if he can't get the speakership himself, and would perhaps like to do where he's assistant speaker deal with McCarthy. McCarthy back in, and Jim Jordan gets to be assistant speaker. This is like assistant manager or assistant to the manager.
I saw Chris Hayes made the joke, assistant to the regional manager.
Many people made the joke.
Yeah, look, I do think if I have some criticism for the Matt Gaetz faction, it is that there are specific demands that I think gave them some legitimacy and credibility here have very much gone to the wayside, either because they're not being covered, reporters aren't interested in them, or because they're not coming to the media, he's not coming to the media and articulating why he's doing this in the first place vociferously enough. So I do think this is ultimately a media game. This is a public opinion game. And it's incumbent on the holdouts to make the case to the American public why they're justified in doing so.
Well, we will probably have an update if that vote does take place while we're filming our show today. So look out for more information from us on that. More Rising right after this.